note sheet sitting on the counter in the front, um, along with a cup. It looks like that has pens in it. And so, if you didn't get one of these, go ahead and get them. If you are watching online, get ready for the hand cramps because you may be writing down a lot of information. Um, my name is Doug Crawford, and it is my pleasure to be able to be with you. This is a photo of my family. This photo was taken in November of this year. I am one of the youngest fathers-in-law you will ever meet. I turned 40 in July. And so my daughter Cheyenne and my son is 23 now. My son Ryan will be 20 in March. My son JD is 5, and then my son Silas is 2. And I learned from Travis today that one of the things that JD wanted to make certain he knew is that JD found out that he has another brother now. He didn't know that Quell was now his brother-in-law, and so he found out over Christmas break that he now has another brother, and which he's super excited about. And so this is my family. My wife Rose and I, we're high school sweethearts. We grew up in church together. My mother-in-law changed my diapers in the church nursery. Our grandparents went to church back in the 50s and 60s. My dad was her parents' youth pastor for a while. It's as close to an arranged marriage as you get without having the actual document signed. And so we've been a part of each other's lives our entire life. Her younger siblings were both firstborns. In fact, Silas, so Marquel excluded, Silas is the only non-firstborn in our family until Quell joined us. I'm a firstborn, Rose is a firstborn, Cheyenne is a firstborn, Ryan is a firstborn, JD is a firstborn. And so if you have any idea about firstborns, there's a lot of opinions in our household, and they're held very strongly, which gives a unique dynamic to our family. As an organization, come on, this needs to work. If it doesn't, we're going to have to switch, but it should be working. Oh, you went outside of Pro Presenter. All right, very good. We'll wait a second. Give me the cue when it's ready. This is one of the fun things about technology is that it always, there you go. To give you a little bit more about information about the organization, we were started in 2015, 5 years ago, and we're started by Chris McKenna. He was our founder and CEO. At the time, he was a middle school pastor in the Grand Rapids area, and I, at the time, was a middle school and high school student pastor. I was a youth pastor for 12 years at a church in Grand Rapids, and he saw that there were parents that were asking more and more questions about apps. Like, what do we do about this? I just learned about that, and their kids are starting to get smartphones again. This is late 2000 aughts and into the 2000 teens, and so the iPhone just came out in 2007, and so now parents are trying to figure out, what do we do? We are digital foreigners raising digital natives. What do we do now? And so he started writing app reviews for parents in his youth group's newsletter, which then other people found out about and said, hey, we do this, and so they're sharing with friends, and then schools find out and like, hey, would you come and talk to our parents about, and then all of a sudden Protect Young Eyes is born, and we, over the last 5 years, have spoken over 1,000 times across the country. With our webinars, we just started in May because of COVID. We've been in 30 different countries, and it's just ridiculous, the stretch and the opportunities that we've been able to have. And not only just in the grassroots level, but also nationally and on the state level. I'm going to show you here in just a second a video. This is Chris's testimony in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee in July of 2019. We were one of 5 witnesses that were called in the very, very early stages of what then became the Earn It Act, which was also part of the bill that President Trump was trying to get in before he gets out of office. If you've heard stuff talking about things that are going to be monitoring social media and some of those things that are going on, that is legislation that we started at the very, very grassroots level of it to hold social media companies responsible for the ways that their platforms are being used to harm children. They say, well, if you get access to that, then we lose end-to-end encryption, and it's not going to be safe for everyone. Well, there's ways that we can go about that. The goal of this is to have people understand that our technology is abusing children all over the world, and we need that to stop. And so we want app companies to earn these protections and not just be given them, just handed out like candy. So anyway, so that's the Senate hearing. You hear that just a little bit. Because of the work we did at the Earn It Act, we will receive the Dignity Defense Alert Award from the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, which is a nonprofit in Washington, D.C., and we are also featured in the documentary Childhood 2.0, which I think I mentioned to you when I spoke back in November as part of one of the morning worship services. Here is the testimony.
Good morning, Chairman Graham, Senator Blumenthal, members of the committee. Thank you so much for allowing all of us this opportunity to speak today. I cannot think of a more noble cause for all of us to be spending our time on than the safety and protection of our children. I began Protect Young Eyes 5 years ago because the internet is complex, and even diligent parents are overwhelmed by the digital choices their children are facing. Through thousands of hours of research, hundreds of presentations at schools around the country, and dozens of articles examining digital trends, we have witnessed both the wonderful potential and the troubling and pervasive darkness that exists in the pockets of millions of young people today. I'm certain that in the course of today's discussion, we will hear difficult stories. I wish they were uncommon. In March 2019, CNN reported that Instagram was the leading social media platform for child grooming by sexual predators. Our own test accounts quickly discovered that young people, particularly young girls, can be hunted like prey. We started an Instagram account with 2 photos and tried to mimic the behavior of an average teen girl. We posted 2 selfies with 3 hashtags each, searched a few hashtags, and liked a few photos. Within a week, we had dozens of men sending us images of their genitals, telling us they were horny, and sending us hardcore pornography through direct messages. Even after we told all of them that we were only 12, they were relentless. A recent poll of 2,000 teens found that nearly 75% of them had received pornographic direct messages from strangers on Instagram, even if they had a private account. But you won't find any warnings in the App Store descriptions for Instagram that mention anything about sexual predators, direct message risks, sex trafficking, or hardcore pornography. Instagram's defaults are not set for child safety or data privacy, even though Instagram is rated 12 plus by Apple and 13 plus by Google. At Protect Young Eyes, we've also seen firsthand the predatory symbiotic relationship that exists between Instagram and Snapchat, both used by 75% of teens today. Many Instagram predators quickly shuttle kids over to Snapchat, where evidence disappears. For example, one relentless pedophile on Instagram who calls himself Daddy invites young girls to join him in Snapchat with Instagram posts like 12-plus-year-old slave girls, obedient whores only, or hit me up on Snap to be Daddy's naughty girl. Snapchat is where explicit content on Pornhub lives just seconds away from every user through backdoors within the app. The app knowingly allows a well-documented list of porn performers to make thousands of dollars daily through their premium Snap accounts. Snapchat is where harmless-looking face filters can encourage kids to share their location on Snap Map. It's the app that gave a Coors Beer ad to 13-year-olds, even though they tout age gating. It's the app where every kid, regardless of age, has access to the Discover News section, where they are taught how to engage in risky sexual behaviors such as hookup, group, anal, or torture sex, how to sell drugs, and how to hide internet activity from parents using incognito mode. But again, you won't find anything in Snapchat's App Store descriptions that warn parents about premium Snapchat accounts, predator risks of using Snap Maps, or the hyper-sexualized content in Discover News. Snapchat is rated 12 plus by Apple and 13 plus by Google. Tech companies will tell us that ratings are already in place. However, ratings are not uniform, lack transparency, and there's little accountability for inaccurate ratings. For example, Twitter was rated 4 plus for a decade, even though hardcore porn and prostitution was everywhere. It is still breaking Apple and Google's no porn policy, but only claims infrequent or mild sexual content in the app description. Netflix is rated 4 plus in Apple's App Store, but teen in Google Play. VPNs, which allow teens to circumvent parental controls, are rated 4 plus. Most social media platforms are rated 12 plus by Apple, even though COPA restricts use by children until age 13. Obviously, the current app ratings process is broken. Tech companies will tell us that protecting kids is a parent's responsibility. However, this position ignores the ubiquitous nature of the internet. Even if I do everything right to protect my own 14-year-old daughter, with almost 90% of teens owning a smart device, a simple ride on the bus or a visit to a friend's house can expose her to life-altering content. Never before in human history have young people had the ability to so radically change the trajectory of each other's lives so quickly. Tech companies will tell us that safeguards are already in place, but it currently takes over 30 steps to properly set up parental controls on an iPhone. We need to simplify this process to help more parents protect their children. For example, better age-based defaults would instantly and easily protect millions of kids. The addition of easy controls over school and bedtime could shut off distracting apps during these very critical times. Tech companies will tell us that regulating apps is too big of a job. It can't be done. However, video games are already successfully doing it, and the ESRB shows us a path that could be applied by reasonable individuals to apps. In fact, it was Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook who recently said, "I believe we need more effective role for governments and regulators." And we agree. Our hope is to create safer digital places for young people. Two simple solutions could change everything. First, create a uniform, independent, and accountable rating system for apps. And second, enact better defaults based on the age provided during device and app setup. Let's fix this for the kids. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Right? I've seen that testimony as many times as anybody in the world has, and it still makes my stomach churn thinking of what is available to our kids. Again, I come as a father, so I absolutely have skin in the game, and also for 15 years as a minister. And when you're counseling parents and kids as they're going through some of the difficulties that come after navigating through some of this content, Lord, I wish they were protected more. What can we do? And so Protect Young Eyes is trying to stand in that gap for you all in holding tech companies responsible, but also providing education for parents and students so they can better navigate their digital lives. As kind of the Word of God so eloquently put, if you train up your kids the way they should go, when they're old, they're not going to depart from it. And as parents, that definitely includes them knowing their faith and their Lord and the Word of God. Silas, my 2-year-old, yesterday saw Rose a little teary-eyed from some stuff that with some friends that were helping them navigate through. And Silas came up to Rose and put his hand on her shoulder and said, "Don't worry, Mommy, God is with you." I love that he assumes that. And so we work hard to train our kids in the way they should go so they have this awareness of who God is and who he's created them to be and their value that's innate in them, so they don't have to go to social media to find their value and to affirm who they are. They've been affirmed by the Creator of all things. But we also need to be training our kids in the way they should go when it comes to their use of their technical devices, their digital life, their physical life, all of these things. Parenting is hard work, but it's even harder being a kid. In fact, as we think through some of the ways and some of the messages that we've been giving, sometimes our best intentions yield results that are different than what we would want. This is an interesting article that looks at how the extreme abstinence view of purity created a sense of shame in evangelical women. We say, stay away, sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad, don't do it, stay away. It's only, but once you're married, hey, enjoy it, it's good, it's God gave this to you. So something that was so connected to shame and sin for how many years of their development, now they enter into the beautiful, life-giving, and selfless relationship of marriage, and now they feel as though they are doing something wrong, sinful even. And so we have to be mindful of how we are teaching our kids and training them in the way they should go. It is not just don't do this. It needs to be so much more than that. Teaching them God's good intention. Again, money counterfeiters, or the people who are supposed to find money counterfeiters, they don't study counterfeits. They study the original things. They know it so well they can spot the counterfeit in an instant. We need to be helping our kids know who God is and who He's created them to be, so that when they hear messages that are contrary to that, they can know it right away and say, nope, that's not who I am, that's not true. So we work hard. Parental controls. You would think, okay, well, then the solution then is just to add some parental controls. All right, cool. Go to your app store and search parental controls. And you're going to find there's more than one or two options. All right? So I just did this. This is just a little video of me this afternoon doing a video search or an app search for parental controls. And this is not an Apple device. But there are all of these options. What's a parent to do? How do you know the difference? What's better? What's worse? What's better for your child that may not be as good for your neighbor's child, but what was good for your neighbor's child may not be as good for your child? How do you know the difference? What are they geared for? What kind of monitoring do I get? Do I get reporting? All of these things. And I stopped here because I didn't want the video to scroll forever. You can keep thumbing. And so we need to realize that our current reality as parents is difficult. All right? And we also need to realize that our children's and our grandchildren's life developing right now is very difficult. We got to go home if the drama was at school. Or we got to go to school if the drama was at home. Our kids don't get a break at all. Our grandkids, they don't get a break. And even if they're shut off to it, that doesn't mean the rest of the world isn't, including the rest of their classmates. And so how do we help with this? Well, we need to get our mind wrapped around the real numbers that are in play here. When we look at these apps, and again, I think I mentioned this slide when I spoke just a couple months ago, here was looking at the big four apps in the United States. So we looked at the top 4 apps and then put their global numbers under them, all right? So these aren't how many the numbers in the United States, because there aren't 2 billion people in the U.S., all right? So the unique monthly users among the big 4 in the United States. So Snapchat is the far left one, which that first number is 500 million, all right? So Snapchat is in that 300 to 400 million monthly average users. TikTok is about 700 million. Instagram, 1 billion. And King YouTube, 2 billion monthly average users are using these apps. And so we have to look at the largeness of the influence, the reach that these apps have. Think of some of the greatest communicators in generations gone by never got this kind of platform in their lifetime, and absolutely did not get it instantly. And so we have to be aware of the influencers that are going on here and who our kids are listening to, because we say this regularly, where the kids are is where the predators are. Things haven't changed. We grew up, okay, the van with blacked out windows or no windows in the corner of the park with a person giving away candy. We don't go talk to him, right? No matter if it's your favorite candy or if he's giving away puppies or whatever it is, we don't go over there because that's a tricky person. That's a dangerous person. We don't talk to strangers. Yet what happens when we just hand our kids a device and we don't pay attention to who they're following and who's following them? So the desire hasn't changed for predators to be around the children. The availability has increased exponentially. To come from that angle, times have never been better for sexual predators. access and content is always available. So how do we protect our kids then? We're going to work through some of that. We polled a local school in Michigan, and to kind of give an idea of where things are at, this is everyday school. This isn't in a particular area. It's just this is what we saw at an average rural public school, a couple hundred kids per grade, all right? A creeper, this is the exact way that we worded the question, all right? This isn't us summarizing. This is the exact phrasing that we put. A creeper has tried to talk to me, all right? And this is the result of yes, okay? So third grade is the far left, and that number that's right below is 20%. So you have about 22% of third graders are saying, so 1 in 5, just over 1 in 5 third graders have said, a creeper tried to talk to me, all right? And we go all the way up to 8th grade, which is about 45%. All right? So that's almost 5 of 9. Well, about 4 of 9, which is ridiculous when we think through the numbers that are going out here, that we have the average being in that 25 to 30% of elementary, middle school kids are being approached by people they would title a creeper. So again, it's everywhere. So what do? Well, we need to get into our heads that all apps with a chat feature are going to have predatory activity in them. All apps with chat features. Whether it's Roblox, Fitbit, the Bible app, it doesn't matter. If there is a platform and a way that you can chat with other users, it is going to be used for great good, but there's also a dark side to it. And we just need to be aware of this. This doesn't mean that we throw all of the devices in the trash because your kids and your grandkids are growing up in this. The technology is there. So how do we help equip our kids so that when they come into contact with creepers or predatory activity, they have tools in their toolbox for how to handle that and what to do next? That's such a critical piece. I got the message sent to me, now what do I do? If I were a kid, I would have hid it. I wouldn't tell my parents. Not because I have great parents. I love them dearly. I was able to spend time with them the last couple of weeks up in Michigan. And I love them, but I wouldn't have gone to them. I would have tried to keep it hidden. Because I'd be afraid that I would get in trouble. Well, why? Because my parents didn't tell me that I wouldn't be if I came and talked to them. I just know that if I saw this kind of stuff in other circumstances, I would have gotten in trouble. So all of a sudden now here it is. It's all about self-preservation. As parents, we have to have a lot of preemptive conversations with our kids. And we'll talk about that throughout the presentation. And we have to also realize that while the coronavirus is spreading rampantly, there's another virus that is throughout parents, and it's the not my kid. My kid wouldn't do that. My kid wouldn't see that. My kid wouldn't send that. My kid would talk to me if they saw something. I know they would, because they tell me everything. And that may be true. Cheyenne, again, if it's in her head, it's out her mouth. I love that about her. There's some times like, honey, you probably should have kept that one inside. But I love that about her. But there are still things and lies that she listens to and other things that stay inside her head that she doesn't speak. So as parents, we have to realize that we are sinners, raising sinners, in a world of sinners. And that nothing is beyond, save the grace of God, them coming into contact with stuff. So when we think this, we have to put this aside and we have to say, my parenting skills are not attached to the content that my kids come into contact with. We need to remove pride from this. And to think, okay, how do I best prepare my kids to enter into this environment or to my grandkids? there's a number of great resources that are out to kind of get at this topic. And there's a lot of people, a lot of organizations that try to come at this issue from different angles, all right? And Protect Young Eyes, we are about advocating for and equipping parents and students to navigate. And we think that's going to be the best way. Yes, we need to hold the app companies accountable, but we need to get a hold of the family and make them aware and help kids and parents and grandparents feel as though they know how to navigate, to give them a roadmap for navigating a digital world. How many of you have watched The Social Dilemma? All right, so a couple of you. All right, so this is on Netflix. This is a Netflix original. And there is great content in The Social Dilemma. If you have time to watch it, I would highly recommend that you do. The issue is it just feels like a confessional booth. It's a bunch of men and women who were part of the original, so you have people who helped start Facebook or Instagram or Twitter and all these people, and they kind of say, we knew what we were doing and we did it anyway. In fact, you're going to hear Sean Parker, the founding president of Facebook, say those exact words in a testimony or an interview with Axios. I'm going to show that. That's the next slide. So it's a great video and documentary, if you want to call that, of a behind the scenes of what was going on, what they were trying to do, and then a bunch of people who feel guilty for doing it. That's really what it feels like. There's no, so now what to it. It's just, here's what it is. I mean, there's great statements like, if you didn't pay for the product, you are the product. And so when we think of all of these free apps that we have free on our side, all it is information collecting for that ad companies are going to pay top dollar to these social media companies, say, we want this information so we can leverage that information for the end user to promote our products to the most targeted audience possible. So we are freely giving all this information about ourselves to the companies who then are selling that in ad space in our social media platforms. And so if you don't pay for the product, you are the product. That's a great statement. I love that statement. That's in here. There's others that are really helpful, but it doesn't get you anywhere. I would argue that Childhood 2.0, the one that we are featured in, we didn't do it. The backing for that was Bark, which is a company based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And they are doing some amazing things when it comes to monitoring and filtering and those kinds of things, social media platforms and others. And if on the back of your packets, you'll see a bunch of really pixelated pictures. Don't try to look at it and say, what is that? Is that a giraffe? No, these are QR codes. If you take the camera on your cell phone and put that inside of it, it'll say, hey, would you like to open a link to? And you just tap, yep, and it'll bring you to Bark or information on the Griffin router or Covenant Eyes or the Childhood 2.0 movie or Gab Wireless or our Tech Ready webinars. All right, so that's what those are, and you'll see those kind of on the screen from time to time. But just want to let you know that I would push you into watching both, but Childhood 2.0, I think, goes another step in helping you now what? There's parents interviewed, there's students interviewed. I think that it's a more helpful resource. Not that Social Dilemma isn't helpful, it just is more information. And I feel like people just, like I said, it's kind of a confessional booth for the people who created the monsters that we have in our pocket.
He's not sure how much Facebook is benefiting society. Parker was the founding president of Facebook when the company started over a decade ago. He recently made some very jarring comments about social media exploiting the vulnerabilities in human psychology during a conversation with Axios. Here's what he had to say.
You know, if the thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them to really understand it, that thought process was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. And that means that we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content, and that's going to get you, more likes and comments. I mean, it's a social validation feedback loop, that it's like it's exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. And I think that the inventors, creators, and it's me, it's Mark, it's the Kevin Systrom at Instagram, it's all of these people, understood this consciously, and we did it anyway.
All right, let me just close my Facebook page right now.
We knew about it consciously, and we did it anyway. What title did he give himself in this? A hacker. This is the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with. And whether he's pointing to his head to indicate that it's an idea, or he's pointing to his head and saying we're brain hackers, whatever the case is, he calls himself a hacker. And again, Sean now is on the other side of it, trying to raise awareness and to help. And again, that interview actually is in, the interview that we just showed you is in The Social Dilemma. And so we recognize we did this at any cost. And you have people in The Social Dilemma that were the guy who invented the like button. Like, okay, wow, that doesn't sound like a very significant thing. But then we think about it, it's like, that is such a natural thing for me to do now on social media. And thinking through the ways, how can we, again, create dependency and almost an addictive nature when it comes to our social platforms and wanting to be affirmed and valued. And I think ultimately that's really what's in play here. We don't quite believe that our ultimate value as being one for whom Christ died and our identity is being created in the image of God is being enough. We need validation from other voices. I need to go viral. I need to say this. I need to record this. And we have kids who are literally dying because they haven't quite made it yet. Or they make it and they find out that it didn't scratch the itch that they had. Now what? I thought this would be it. It isn't. I'm done. And so when we look at this, in April of 2020, the National Center on Health Statistics released a study showing that the overall suicide deaths from 1999, which is the year I graduated from high school, to 2018 increased 66% for all Americans. Now this chart is a little difficult to read. But as we're looking at this, that top number, this is just women, all right? This isn't sexist in any way. It's just that it seems as though that social media affects women differently, all right? And so this is suicide rates for females by age group. That top age group is 45 to 64 age, from 45 to 64. And so you'll notice that they all, except for in 2003 to 2005, there's a little bump in there. It seems like all of them, a little bit after 2007 and after that, they finally start to find their way going up. And again, 2007 was the year of the iPhone. And so you start looking at it. Now, is that the only thing that caused this? No. But it's interesting that the rates didn't climb as quickly in any decade that we looked at until we get here as quickly as it does now. And so we have to consider this. What is it about our social media and what is about the digital age that is causing us to feel less and less valued? To feel as though there is no way out of this, whether it's bullying or it's other forms of verbal abuse or it's the promise of fame and fortune that you can't ever seem to achieve but everybody else does. Whatever the case is where you come to the point where you feel helpless. We just need to be aware of these kinds of things. Excuse me. We as parents need to realize that our kids will always know more than us. we need to realize they will always find ways to beat us. And we also need to realize that parental controls alone don't work. You cannot pass off your parental responsibility to anyone or anything. God gave your kids to you to raise them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, and has placed you within the community of believers to add into those influencers into your kids. That's why it's so important for them to be in the church. And this is coming from a kid who is a pastor's kid. Not many of us made it, sadly enough. And the fact that I can go back to the church, I was just there a couple weeks ago, that I pastored at, and to be able to preach in the pulpit and to fill in pulpit supply, and to go to a Christmas Eve service at the church that my wife and I grew up in, and see people that I haven't seen in a while. And again, we probably broke some COVID laws because they gave me hugs and I didn't stop them. Please forgive me. But it was Mama C. I mean, she's like my best friend's mom. She's like a mom to me too. But we look at this and we need a community of people coming alongside, people who we can place into our kids' lives intentionally. As a pastor, I loved having other people loving my kids, because I got to be that outside person for everybody else's family. And I loved seeing people stepping out and loving on the pastor's kids. We need the church. We need one another. But ultimately, God gave your kids to you. The ubiquity, which is a big word that means it's everywhere, all right? The ubiquity of technology demands that we equip our children with tools and training so that they approach our digital world with confidence. I want my kids, for the first time that they interact with pornographic content, to already know what to do. For them to see it and say, no, my dad told me about that. That's not interesting. This is what it is. I don't want, and move, boom, done. I knew this day was going to come. It finally did. I know what to do. It's at that, I don't want to be practicing triage in the moment. I want to be doing the work ahead of time. At Protect Young Eyes, we believe that one of the best ways to do this is by building digital trust. And we believe so firmly in this concept that we trademarked digital trust framework as a way for us to be able to give hooks for us, because I kind of work at that 30,000 foot level. It helps me to see the whole, and then I can focus in. Some of you are the whole, just I don't want to deal with all that. Give me my one little thing to focus in on. For me, the framework helps. And so I find that in our parenting, when it comes to digital trust, whether it's digital trust erosion on this side, digital trust evasion on this side, those are two pits that we can very regularly fall into. Where the digital trust erosion is, my parenting is constantly coming from a position that I do not trust. And so any trust that I did build my kids, I'm eroding because I'm looking over their shoulders. I spend my nights awake in fear, and I'm paralyzed. I just have to protect my little innocent kid. And you become all consumed on that. And you maybe think that's exactly what you need to do, but your kids may be thinking, just let me breathe a second here. Now, some of you have kids who have broken trust. I get it. I was one of those kids. All right? They don't get a free pass every time. So be wise about it. But we also need to make certain that we aren't wanting to control every scenario our kids ever come into contact with, because we are not preparing them for life outside of the home if we do that. Then we swing to the other pit, where we go from annoyance to avoidance. Hey kid, here's the phone. Good luck. I know that there's probably some bad stuff in there, but I really don't have the time to look at it. I don't care about it. I put some monitoring on there, but hopefully, and I'm not even going to really check the reports, just here you go. Or I don't know how to talk about this kind of stuff. It's really difficult. I feel uncomfortable saying penis in front of my kids, and so I'm not going to say anything. That's one of my favorite words to say in a church, just so you know, as a pastor. 'Cause I'm probably one of the few people that have ever said that word in this room, ever. All right? But we have to be able, if we can't even have these conversations and use these terms in front of a group of adults, you think we're going to be able to do that with our kids? And so when we think through if we even got a sex talk, and I'm not even going to assume that all of you did, all right? I remember so little from my talk with my dad. We're from Michigan. We went to a Pistons game. We lived on the west side of the state, so we had a 2.5-hour drive to the east side of the state. All I remember is going up to the church office because the tickets were in my dad's office, and he went in there, and before he left me alone with my thoughts, he said, "Doug, what do you think about sex?" I'm 10. "What do you think about sex?" I can't believe my dad just said that word, right? And I'm like, "It's bad?" And then he left me in the car all by myself to go get the tickets, and he comes back in. And the only other thing that I remember at all, now again, I've had a couple of seizures, and so my memory is bad anyway, but the only other thing I remember at all is my dad rehearsing to me later the kind of almost guilt and shame that he felt confessing to his son that his son's parents did that, right? It's like, and you and mommy do that? Yeah. Well, I'm the oldest of 6 kids, so I did it a lot, all right? But it's one of those things that again, it was so awkward for him. Cheyenne, "Dad, what's erectile dysfunction?" "All right, honey, here's what it is." And we talk about it. Ryan, he's not going to ask the questions, so I have to be more intentional with him. So as we work through and think through these kinds of things and have these conversations with our kids, we need to realize that we need to be doing behaviors that are going to build digital trust. And that's what we believe the center column is created to do these 5 C's. And we're going to spend the bulk of the rest of our time hitting these 5 C's. 1, copy me. 2, co-play. 3, curiosity. 4, conversation. 5, coaching. All right? When we think through some of the stuff, again, when we think through our upbringing and then our kids' upbringing, the world that they're growing up in, and the tendency toward the helicopter parents that either we had and promised we were never going to become, but now we're worse than, or that we didn't have, and so we're trying to swing the pendulum a different way to make sure that we protect our kids from the things that we experienced, thinking that our overachieving activities are going to make that happen. This article, What Happened to American Childhood, says this: if we want to prepare our kids for difficult times, we should let them fail at things now and allow them to encounter obstacles and to talk candidly about worrisome topics. I want my kids to fail in my controlled environment with my love wrapping around them and my counsel encouraging them next time. I need my kids to learn how to say no before they leave my house. My daughter Cheyenne went to she went into massage therapy. So she first went to a school that was had 2-year and 4-year programs. They had an associate's in massage therapy, which most places is just a 9-month thing, and kind of has the business side of things. Like, okay, go there. She went there for a year and then went to a tech school and finished up becoming a massage therapist. But she was on campus in an apartment with 4 other girls. My son Ryan went to Ferris State University for 1 semester to go toward a degree in business. He stepped away from school for now, but again, lived in a secular college campus with 3 other dudes in a 2-bedroom apartment or 2-bedroom dorm. I don't want my kids entering that college campus and having to say no to temptations for the first time, because I, as a parent, protected them from having to make a decision their entire life. You know what I'm saying? This is what we need to be doing. And so in the small areas, I want my kids to have skinned knees, and if they break an arm, fine, but I don't want them to fatally fall. And so we work through this. Copy me. Would you, when we think through what we mean by copy me, we ask these questions. Would you want them, your kids or grandkids, to use their technology just like you? Where you use it, how you use it, what you use it for? Would you want your kids to replicate your digital experience in their digital experience? And if the answer is no, it sounds like you need to change some patterns. Because so many of these things are caught, not taught. When you're in student ministry, you get to know kids many times before you get to know their parents, because you just spend so much more time with them. But it doesn't take long when you're sitting down with the parents to see where their kids got it from. You're like, oh my word, that's where Chelsea gets that. All right, that's hilarious. It's just one of those things, because like, where did, oh, you're just like your dad. That's why. Okay, all right, cool. Apple didn't fall far from the tree. Cool. I've seen it play out here. Now I can help mom and dad kind of navigate some of these things and work together. But it's so much of this. You have those mannerisms. You have these other different things. I've watched friends of mine who work together start borrowing each other's mannerisms. And you start to act like the people you spend the most time with. And we are still, study after study after study shows that parents are still the primary influencers of their kids. It's not even close. You are either an influencer by your presence or you're an influencer by your absence, but you still have influenced the life of your kid. Leverage that. Our friend Colin Karchner, who tragically passed away in 2020 suddenly, laid down on his couch and passed away. He was in his early 40s. In fact, Chris, our founder, tomorrow night is doing his first presentation that was originally scheduled for Colin, and they needed to fill a speaker, and so Chris is flying into southern Georgia tonight, right now, to speak tomorrow at a Christian school and to talk to parents. But Colin said this: showing your kids you love them is 2% effort and 98% putting your phone down. This isn't brain surgery. This isn't rocket science. This is, you're here, your kid comes up to talk to you. Hey, honey, what's going on? How can I help? That's it. Hey, honey, what's going on? How can I help? You want to affirm the value of your kids and your grandkids? Put this down. Show them your eyeballs. Turn your shoulders toward them. All the things that you have told them 700 times to do. You look at me when I'm talking to you, right? Can you imagine if your 3-year-old throws that back at you? Mommy, you look at me when I'm talking to you. You're right. I don't like how that felt, but you are right. Yes, honey, I will listen. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? We need to be, again, as it says, follow me in 1 Corinthians, follow me as I follow Christ. We need to realize that as parents, that not only in our spiritual lives, but also our digital lives, we need our kids to be able to rightly emulate us. Interestingly, there's USA Today article that connected secondhand smoke of a generation or two ago to smartphone use of today's generation. Some of you may have grown up with parents who smoked in the house. You didn't smoke, your parents did, and you may have lung issues because your parents smoked. You never put a cigarette to the mouth, but you have suffered the effects of that. We are seeing those kinds of things showing up in kids now. And our prayer is that it doesn't take us 30 years to figure this out like it did with these cigarette companies. In that article, it says this: regular quality interactions with parents, talking, listening, singing, reading, and playing together fuel children's language development and their acquisition of communication skills. And for children to get the brain food they need, parents need to be able to notice and respond to coos, smiles, eye contact, and later on, words, facial expressions, gestures, and emotions. With hours less of these interactions each day, a child's foundation for communication and social development is weakened, potentially impacting school readiness and creating a ripple effect throughout that child's life. If you want to watch an interesting YouTube video, if you go to YouTube and you search the still face experiment, all right, you're going to see a video, this video and other videos. And this was a video that was done by sociologists and development and child development kinds of counselors and therapists, and saying, okay, what are the effects? And so what this is a caption of doing, or there's a mom sitting in front of her kid. She had her phone down. She's looking. The kid is smiling, responding, cooing, interacting with. Phone goes up. And many times when we're looking at our cell phones, we have a rested face, and it's just a still face. We're just reading. And so she does this. And after a period of time, the baby starts getting agitated, starts trying to do things to show off, to get mom's attention, then starts crying. And it's incredible to think of the influence that our lack of communication and expression has upon our children's development. So the effects of when we talk about this copy me kinds of behavior, there's a variety of different organizations that support what we're saying. A lot of them agree on some common things. One, that almost no sedentary screen time for ages 0 to 2 years old. All right? We did better with this with Silas. JD, every now and then, we'd put him down. We'd have I'll say stupid because that's how it felt at the time, but some silly kids' Christian songs playing on the television just because he would calm down, give us a chance to fold some laundry or to get dinner ready or whatever. Now, a television screen and an iPhone influence the brain differently. The blue light that's emitting out of these kinds of devices is much more intense than coming out of a television, but still, not a proud moment to be like, oh, bummer. That's all right. I turned out decent, and I watched television as a kid. Less is almost always best. How adults use tech impacts how our kids use tech. World Health Organization, yes. The American Academy of Pediatrics, yes. Other organizations, yes. They agree on these things. So what we've called this is we said, okay, so let's think of the kinds of behaviors that we don't want to see in our kids, and what is the most dangerous way for our kids to interact, or where's the riskiest environment for kids? And we've come up with the toxic trio. And we say that when you combine darkness, bedroom, and boredom, you have created an extremely high-risk environment for your child when it comes to their interaction with an internet-connected device. Does that make sense? So whether you're 4, 14, or 40, you put yourself in this environment, you are increasing the risk of you making bad decisions online. The Bible is filled with talking about darkness, and very little of it is any good in a positive context. All right? So when we think of darkness, again, darkness is concealing, it's hiding, it's separating, it's distancing, it's isolating in a lot of different ways. A bedroom is probably the place where your kids feel the most safe. So I'm going to take a higher risk if I feel like I'm still safe. The flower planters out here, Silas was on just earlier today. And he was standing at it, and he looked like he wanted to jump off of one. I was like, are you going to jump? He goes, it's high. I was like, it is high. Are you going to jump? And then he went to kind of go jump where the concrete was. Like, buddy, how about you jump where the grass is? It's a little softer. And he's like, it's too high. I said, okay, we want to jump to Dad. And he just launched. Why? Because he knew Dad would catch him. Jumping without Dad, jumping with Dad, it's safe. I'm going to risk now because I feel safe. The same is true when it comes to our devices. When we feel as though we can't be harmed, we are going to have a higher risk tolerance because we don't believe we can be harmed. And then boredom. when you when you have the constant scroll and you just sit there and you're just thumbing through stuff. Got nothing else to do. Thumb through. Well, that was an interesting ad. Well, that's a really interesting article. And then, okay, I'm going to tap that. And then all of a sudden you're rabbit trailing. And you're starting to go because your mind is not engaged. And so when you combine all of those things, and you think of when you think of the proclivity of our children to use their technology in we wrote an article, the 5 most dangerous places for kids to be online. I think I mentioned this when I spoke a couple months ago. Bedrooms, bathrooms, school bus, grandma and grandpa's house, sleepover. For various different reasons. Bedroom, again, you feel safe. Bathroom, you're usually pretty exposed in the bathroom. School bus, the adult to child ratio is pretty bad there for monitoring. Slumber parties, usually up later than parents are. And then grandparents' house. They don't know their grandkids can even get into that stuff on their internet. They're just ignorant. That's okay, because it wasn't part of their upbringing. They had other enemies to face in their parenting. They're not thinking of digital enemies. They had to think of other things. So that's, again, as you look at Copy Me, that's what we're getting at. Co-play. Shoulder-to-shoulder activities open up bridges of conversation and connection with our children. Understanding how your kids use technology is a wonderful window into their heart. How many of you have gaming devices in your home? And you have kids or grandkids in the house as well, right? You have a gaming device and there's kids that are there regularly. All right. So what we need to realize is if we want to build digital trust, our kids need to see us joining with them in some of their digital experiences. Whether it's playing video games with them or it's watching YouTube videos with them, but joining them in this so that your conversations and your activities aren't always saying, no, 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 don't. It's, okay, let's do this together. Again, that's going to build digital trust. Okay, I remember that time that my mom or my dad played that game with me. Not all video games are bad because they played a video game with me. Now, and so you're starting to, okay, I can trust them in this. And they're starting to, they're not realizing the things that are connecting inside their brain, but you are building trust. And what we find many times is if hands are moving, mouths are moving. If we can have and I'm going to borrow what Travis said once, if we can have a mutual distraction, I say that because I said it on the first service, and then he used it the second service last time I spoke here. So I'm going to give him credit for coming up with the term. If we have a mutual distraction, whether it's the open road, or if it's a television, or if it's a movie, movies are more difficult because usually you don't talk during those. Video games you can talk, road trips you can talk. But if you have things that you can be looking and focusing at that is different than the conversation, sometimes you're going to get your kids to talk about stuff that they wouldn't ever. And sometimes, especially if it's during video games, they all of a sudden might catch themselves mid-sentence realizing what they're about to talk to you about. And if they're keen enough, they may be thinking that you did that on purpose. And they'd be right. And you'd say, look what happened. Wasn't this fun? We got to talk about some stuff that you said you never wanted to talk about. And so being creative in this co-playing, joining with them in some of these things that you can join in with them so that all of your conversations are not negative or restrictive, that you can show them how to say yes. And this isn't saying that parents who delay their kids having social media or video games or those kinds of things are automatically in that annoyance, digital trust erosion category. But if you are going to say yes to delaying and you're going to say no to their interaction, you still need to parent them as though you have said yes. You need to be preparing them for an environment where they are allowed and able to make a decision to do these things. You don't just go into the gym and pick up the heaviest weight and throw them on and start benching all of the weights that will fit on the bar. You can't do that. You have to start small and build the strength and the muscles to be able to do those things so that all of a sudden now your kid is stepping outside and they're able to bench not only their weight but even more whereas before they struggled with the 45-pound bar. So with this co-play, joining with them, having stuff that you can share in together, because then that gives opportunity, excuse me, for curiosity, to ask questions while you're playing. Say, hey, we're playing. What are some of the other games that that your friends are playing that you're talking about? What ones would you like for us to look at and maybe get for you for your birthday or for Christmas? Oh, this. Okay, then they start talking blah, 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 blah. And so you're learning about this. What is it that their friends are playing with? What is it that they're interested in? Where are their heart's affections? You want to know what your kid values, look at what they watch on YouTube. And so as we think through this interaction and what they're doing, we can have these conversations. We can be curious. Condemnation is easy. Curiosity is hard. Because it forces you to be positive, delicate, calm, patient. Remember this, if all your tech conversations are consequence, negativity, and yelling, then what are the chances they'll talk to you and something horrible happens? None. 0 chance. If it's always negative and it's always I'm getting in trouble or it's I'm feeling like I'm in trouble because of the posture or the volume or the positioning or the tenor of my parent's voice, if this conversation is always one that ends in or includes an argument, I'm not going to start that. So I'm either not going to talk about it at all, or I'm going to go to Google and YouTube and find out more about it on my own or talk to my friends. But they're not going to go to the primary people that they ought to go to, because we've already done the work to erode that trust. And so when we're thinking through this, it's kind of a time to pause for reflection to say, okay, if there were scales, how are they? What is the pattern of my conversation when it comes to my kid's digital life? What is the pattern of the conversations when it comes to any part of my kid's life? Is it more? Some of us in the room are quick-tempered. We always have been. How do you deal with that in the moment with your kids? Maybe you've always been the passive-aggressive one where you don't want to bring it up, but you go about it other ways. Or you're the avoiding because Cheyenne is the I don't want drama person. She will cave in an instant when she was younger. Now she's learning how to do this better. But she would cave if you pushed back at all. Okay, fine, whatever. I don't want drama. I don't want an argument. I'll do whatever. Just stop. I'll just do whatever you want. Which is great because it's compliance. It's terrible because I'm not preparing her for life outside of my home. So just think through that. What is the regular diet that my kids are getting? What are they observing in me? How are these conversations going? Or what's my curiosity level? Do I ask questions and then as soon as I find an answer, is there condemnation? Do I come with an iron fist right after? And we need as parents to remember to not provoke our children to wrath. That doesn't mean we spare the rod, spoil the child. Absolutely. But fathers, do not promote your kids to wrath. How do we work through that? Because there are a lot of things we can talk about. We can talk about TikTok. We can talk about Instagram. We can talk about Snapchat. There's all of these things. Hey, what do you know about this? What have you heard about this? Do you have this? Do even your friends have this? When we look at adolescence, 75%, again, Chris referenced this, 75% of teens have both Instagram and Snapchat. 90% of teens are influenced by Snapchat, meaning there's a window of about 15% of kids who don't have an account but are influenced by it because their circle of friends do. And so again, that's what I say. If you choose to delay, if you choose to say no, you need to parent as though you have said yes. Because just because it's not allowed in your home doesn't mean it's not allowed in the homes of the kids that they ride on the school bus, they go and play, they hang out with after soccer practice, whatever the case is. Again, we have parents regularly tell us how difficult it is being a parent. And as a parent, I'm with you. I join you in that. I have an extra level of energy, I believe, but it's still draining being a parent. There are so many times it'd be just so much easier. There's a comedian that he he talks about how easy it is for people without kids to leave the house. Just to leave the house, compared to what it's like when you have children to leave the house. He's a British comedian. YouTube it if you want. Oh, just a fun, I think it's McIntyre is his last name. But search for it. It is worth it because it is exactly every morning trying to leave the house when you have children. All right? If there's bad words in it, I apologize. I don't usually remember those things. I don't believe that there is because he's a pretty clean comedian. But it is one just thinking of, shall we go? Yes. And they walk out the house. And that's it. That's all you have to do when you don't have kids, right? And so parenting is hard. I'm with you in it, but it is worth it. Why? Because dads in the room, God has entrusted us with the name that he has given himself as Father. And it is our responsibility as fathers to do a good job in our parenting so we don't ruin our kids' theology. Now, none of us are going to be perfect at this. I get that. But our kids also need to know that we don't think that we're doing this perfectly either. But pointing them, saying, here is the bar, and it is set as our Heavenly Father, who is benevolent, just. My dad just had to preach in Isaiah. He was going through Isaiah this past week on God's wrath. He exercises wrath upon injustice and upon sin. But we need to be in our parenting and if we're going to take the title of father, we need to make certain as dads that we are emulating our Father and bearing the name well. So it's hard being a parent, but it's even harder being a kid. And what we have to do is when we talk about this curiosity part of the building digital trust, we have to wonder, okay, what is the draw then? Why do kids go to? And this is an article, again, there's that QR code. I can't remember, did I put the QR codes of all the articles in the notes? I didn't. So you can, it says for later, Protect Young Eyes blog, why kids look at pornography. If you just go to our website and in the search bar, just put that in, you can get access to that article, or you can use your camera, and if the screen is large enough for you, or if you're watching this online, you can put your camera in front of your screen and look at that, and it'll bring you to the website that you can read this. Why kids look at pornography. Often it's not their fault. Here's why, and here's what to do. To help give you some things, some handles to navigate through this. If this is you as a parent, and if your child has already interacted with pornographic content, whether intentionally or accidentally, this is at least a guide to help you navigate how to make next steps, how to frame your conversations, what to do, and those kinds of things. So it can be a really, really helpful guide and resource for you, all right? So, before we take a break, I think the next slide is break. Yes, it is. All right, before we take a break, we need to ask this big question. When it comes to this curiosity, copy me, co-play, all of this first part of this digital trust, does your child know beyond any doubt that he or she can always land softly with you? Do they know that mom and dad or grandma and grandpa is a safe place that I can go ask questions, talk about what I've seen, all of these kinds of things? Do I know that? And if I have to come to them and say, Mommy, Daddy, I saw this, do they know that they can land softly with you? It's a big deal when it comes to building digital trust. All right, so we're going to take a break, and in, let's say, 8 minutes, so at 6:50, we will start the next part of this, all right?
I could just sit and wait for all.
All right, if you're out in the foyer grabbing snacks, get one more handful and we're going to get going. Snacks for dinner are the best. Are there any peanut M&Ms out there, Cindy? Ah. Oh, yeah. Yes. You ever been to Wrigley Field? Yeah. When you buy tickets for a Cubs game at Wrigley Field, there are sections on the ticket will say if there's a pole in your view or not, because there are posts all the time. And you can, like, wow, this ticket is way cheaper than one right next to it. Yep. All right, we'll get started. Getting into the next C, so we've done copy me, and then co-play, and then curiosity, which then will lead to conversations. Again, asking the questions, being curious. What are some of the things that your kids are seeing? What are you seeing? What are the friends? What games do you wish that we had? What apps do you wish that you had? What are the apps that your friends have? What have you seen on those apps? Have you ever seen anything that made you feel uncomfortable or was scary or maybe something you shouldn't have looked at? What did you do when you saw it? Asking these kinds of questions gives them opportunity. And in fact, some of the curiosity can be, hey, I don't know how to set up our router. Can you help me do that? If you have an upper elementary or middle school kid, I guarantee you they know how to do it. All right? And if not, they will love doing it with you. Again, this is part of that co-play piece where after you've done all the things, change the password so they can't get in and change everything after you've gone to bed. But include them in this. This isn't something that needs to be so taboo and off limits that this is what mommy and daddy do and this is what kids do. But you have an opportunity to bring them alongside. All right, so then that leads to conversations. Talk to your kids, grandkids, nieces about all the awkward things that no one talked to you about when you were a kid. If you don't talk to them, then Dr. YouTube, Dr. TikTok, Dr. Google will, and their offices are 24/7. The internet never sleeps. Some in this room actually grew up in a time where the programming on television stopped, right? At a certain time, everything was done. We're done for the day. All snowflakes, here we go, static, nothing. Man, have we changed. In fact, what seems so normal to have that scrolling news ticker on the bottom if you're watching any sort of news or sports or anything, did you know that started with 9/11? When we needed constant update on stuff, that ticker on the bottom, that scrolling information on the bottom of the screen came around during 9/11. And now it's just a normal part of what clutters up the screen. We don't even see it at times. And so we think of the ways that we've gone from just at 8 o'clock or whatever time it is, programming ends, everybody, because you're supposed to go to bed because you got to go to work in the morning, to now the 24-hour news cycle where people are trying to create news so that they have something to do to validate their job. and you're constantly being inundated with stuff that you ought not ever care about. You never did until you were told that you needed to. We now have this 24/7 world that our kids don't know any different. And so when we talk about this, what we say, when we say it, how we say it, where we say it, all matters. There is a wrong time for the right conversation. You know this because your kids try to have them with you. Right? Mommy, what's the blah, blah? I'm like, sweetheart, that's a great question. We're trying to get ready for church. Yeah, but what about, like, get your pants on, get your shoes on, and then I'll answer the question while we're in the car on the way to church. Yeah, but what about, I want to answer this, just not right now. But then trying to find those times when we can set everything aside and say, all right, we're going to talk about this. It's important to you now. I need to answer it to you now because I want you to know that what your questions are important to me. I do have time for you. But it's in those moments that we're trying to figure all of this stuff out. And so we need to, just as though we want our kids to have better timing, we as parents need to have better timing. It made me laugh this morning. And this isn't throwing Rose under the bus, but it made me laugh because as a pastor for 15 years, I would have people right before programming was about to start want to talk to me about something. And Rose wanted to talk to Travis about volunteering with the kids, which is a great thing. We want her to do that, don't we, Travis? We want her to be involved with maybe the nursery and helping instill some things into that and do these, which is great. But it was just so funny because it's like 5 minutes before service is about to start, and Rose is talking, and I was like, sweetheart, you got to talk to Travis about this at a different time. This is, as a pastor, I'm just trying to help my brother out here. And so she realized, and so she went and she'll talk with him about more of it later. But it's just the timing of having a good conversation, but it's just not the right time. We need to be what we say, when we say it, how we say it, where we say it, all matters. So, class, what's the right age to talk to your kid about pornography? If you were to give an age, go back to your childless life. What do you think you would have said before you raised children? What age do you talk to the kids about pornography? Yeah, my sons don't need to know what's sexy right now. But what age? What feels right? Which is a very Christian question to ask. I know. It is. Okay. How many feel 6 or 7 is too early? Like if you were coming up with when would you feel comfortable talking about pornography with your kids? Sure. 8? Yeah. So if they're given an internet ready device, the conversation needs to happen before they get the device. Okay. Yeah. It's interesting because when we look at this, many would say maybe that 8 to 10, you're in Middle school usually have some sort of either health class or biology class where the mechanics of everything is going to come up. And so, all right, so now you've seen pictures of genitals, and should I have the conversation before that? Yeah. So then, all right, it's hard, right? And so I would say whatever number you came up in your head, subtract 2, start there. And this doesn't mean that you have to have the full-blown talk, okay? In fact, I would encourage you not to. This needs to be a regular pattern, just as though we were in ancient Israel where God has given the Shema, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. We need to love the Lord with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Teach these things to your children. Talk about it when you're on the path, when you get up, when you lie down, when you're along the way. Have them be as frontlit, as on your doorposts and on your gates, as frontlets between your eyes. Like, this needs to be something that is just your faith development is just a normal part of your life. When it comes to some of these other kinds of conversations and topics, the same is true. This doesn't have to be, okay, we make a special event when we go out and have the talk. JD and Silas will always use the anatomically correct term for any body part. So if they've said that in your presence and you felt uncomfortable, I'm not going to apologize that they said it. I'm just sorry that you were uncomfortable. All right? There's no Mr. Willies or any other things in our house. All right? It is what it is. All right? And so as we work through this, I want there to be an understanding and so one of the things that, and if I can borrow this resource, one of you is going to win this actual copy of this book of Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. All right? There's Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and also Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior. And this book is one that, again, tries to work through a variety of different things. The subtitle is Porn-Proofing Today's Young Kids. And so helping them, what's pornography? What's an addiction? My feeling brain, my thinking brain, my two brains work together, my brain's attraction center, how pornography tricks the brain into an addiction. A whole bunch of different things, and this is geared toward you reading along with your 8 to 10-year-old, maybe 6 or 7. The Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior was JD's favorite book when we first bought it, and I think he was 3 or 4 at the time. And we would read it multiple times a day for the first, it felt like forever. I almost had the book memorized. JD loves to read. But when we're talking through this, what's the right age? Take that age, subtract 2, and start laying the groundwork then. Because I promise you, they are going to interact with this content earlier than you wanted them to. So how can we help them know what to do when they see it for the first time, or they hear it being talked about for the first time? How do we help them in that? We like to say, make porn the norm. If they're not rolling their eyes at you yet, then you're not talking about it enough. Persistent, consistent conversations. I know, Dad. All right, cool. We're about where we need to be. And the reason, this isn't to be so sex-minded, but we have a culture that is so sex-minded. That's the problem. That's the difficulty. We were all middle schoolers once. If you were ever in a locker room, ever, for any sport, at any age. And so we have to help our kids navigate this well, knowing they're going to fail, knowing you're going to fail, and extending grace upon grace upon grace, as we heard this in this morning's message and last week's as well. One of the things that we do when we're talking to students, and again, if your kids are in a school at all, we do K through 12 presentations. We do secular parent presentations. So it's this just without the general theology and scripture verses. We have age-appropriate kindergarten through 12. We kind of break it out in K through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, And then we have a high school presentation. We do professional development. We do a variety of different things, faith-based and secular. But as we go through this, when I'm talking to kids, which I'm actually going to be doing my first virtual presentation Wednesday with a Christian school in Tennessee, where they're all going to be gathered in their sanctuary auditorium or chapel at a Christian school, and I'm going to be in my office here in Venice, and I'm going to have to talk to kindergarten through second graders through a camera and having them do some of the interactive things that I do when I talk to kids and get down on the floor with them. So pray for me Wednesday, because I'm kind of wondering how this is all going to work. But one of the things that we do with kids is we have them practice this, and we get them to shout it as loud as they can, and then as quietly as they can. But to put it down and tell someone. Whenever they see something that makes them feel uncomfortable or is scary or is a bad picture, we tell them to put it down and tell someone. I'll break them up. Okay, this side of the group, you say put it down. Then you say tell someone when I point at you. And then I point at them and I'm like, okay, do it quiet. They do it. And then do as loud as you can. Put it down. And I always have to ask the teachers, do we have any kids who are auditory sensitive? Because it may get loud, and then I try to adjust from there or make sure they have their headphones or whatever it is. But it gets loud because kids love to shout when they get the permission to do it. And so, but to have them put it down and tell someone, give them very simple, practical things that they can do. You're not going to stop them from seeing everything, but you can have that first reaction, and you can train them in that. With men that I've held them accountable, I tell them you're not going to be held accountable or responsible for the first glance, but you are responsible for the second. Let your eyes bounce. She's like, oh, she bent over. Okay, look somewhere else. Okay, oh, that was this. Okay, look. And just constantly, you can't control the first look, but you can control the second. You can't control when your kids see it, but you can help train them what to do once they have. We've written a blog post. How to talk to a 5-year-old about pornography. Now, this isn't the magic number, like, oh, shoot, I thought it was 8, and the answer was 5. That's not the point of this title. The point of the title is to say it is younger than what you think, and you can start in an appropriate way early. JD knows that nobody except mom and dad and anybody else that mommy and daddy say it's okay to are able to see or touch anything under their swimsuit or their underwear. That's just how we've kept it. I don't have to talk about pedophilia. I don't have to talk about sexual abuse. I can just say nobody sees under your or touches under your underwear. And I can leave it at that. And they're okay with it. JD, right now, I don't know where he got this, but he's like, I'm not a hugger. That's his phrase right now. I'm not a hugger. And so he'll hug Rose and I, he'll hug family members, but there was a sweet young lady he's good friends with, and part of our homeschooling group. She wanted to say goodbye to JD, and she was like, oh, I'm going to give him a hug, and he goes, I'm not a hugger. And I was like, you know what, dude? You keep that up for at least another 10, 12 years, and we're going to be in good shape, right? But again, just how can we have conversations with our kids that's appropriate for them to know what is safe, what isn't safe, when to talk to mommy and daddy about it, that mommy and daddy are not going to be upset. We're going to be thankful that you talked to us, and then modeling that so when they do talk to you, you don't blow up and undo all the work that you did in trying to build that trust. So again, here's those resources that I mentioned. Again, these are secular, but they're excellent. There are other, if you go to our website, protectyoungeyes.com, you go to resources. We have some faith-based resources as well, but we just want to promote the best content we can find. If it talks about, and if it integrates our faith in it, great. If it doesn't, and it's a great resource, we want you to know about it. And so this is one of those. So again, we have to ask that question, does your child know beyond any doubt that he or she can always land softly with you? The term that I use with kids, so we talked about online predators with kindergartners. I don't use the term. We talk about tricky people. People who are asking, people that you don't know online that are asking questions about you. Who you are, what your name is, where you live, what's your favorite sport, what's your favorite color, these kinds of things. All right? And so as we're looking through this, We need to, when kids are talking with tricky people, does your nice son or daughter know how to walk away from a nice predator? Because think of how you've trained your kids. They're standing next to you, a friend you haven't seen in a while comes up and you say, hey, and they say, hey, buddy, what's your name? And they look at you and they're like, I'm not going to talk to the stranger. And you say, no, he asked you a question. It's rude not to answer his question. Well, in that context, where you have determined safe person with safe person by child, that's okay to answer that. Your kid isn't picking up on the context. Your kid is picking up, I got in trouble for not answering the question. It was rude. I need to be nice. So how do we help our kids navigate and know the difference between the people they can answer questions to and who they can't? I talk to older students saying if you don't know them off the internet, you don't talk to them on the internet. Because we need to give our kids permission. If you don't, they're not going to know how to walk away. They're going to answer because that's what nice kids do, because you told them that. And it's a good lesson. It's true. The problem is there are people that abuse trust. There was a dad who spoke to us after one presentation, said he had a 14-year-old boy who had a predator that was reaching out and talking with him and was starting to befriend and get information and these kinds of things and putting him in a pretty dangerous position. And when the dad finally found out about it, he asked, why didn't you tell me about it? Why didn't you say something? It was like, Dad, he was really nice. And if we have kids who are not being affirmed in their identity and value and are not hearing nice words said of them, then they are going to follow the people that do. In fact, what we're seeing right now, especially in teenagers, is an activity called sad fishing. We have predators who are searching and combing through profiles, trying to find sad kids, and then empathizing with them, coming alongside them in their struggles, and earning the trust in order to flip it for their own personal advantages. And this is happening everywhere. We all had friends, whether it was guys or girls, growing up that were vulnerable to this stuff because they had a bad home life, they had this or the other thing, and all it took was just one guy to be kind to her, and she would fall for him every time. Or for one girl to be kind to him, and he would fall for her every time. You're just vulnerable for that. And so why wouldn't predators take advantage of that in the digital world? So we need to be aware of this, that again, that we are affirming our kids, that we are encouraging them in all of the right things, that we are affirming things that are true, right, excellent, praiseworthy, that go beyond the books or the courts, that are affirming behavior that you would see repeated and encouraged in Scripture. Tricky people, the new stranger danger for the digital age. Again, this is another blog post that we've written to help parents kind of wrap their minds around what this looks like now. Again, we've moved beyond the windowless van in the park to people who have profiles that look exactly like your kids, that talk the same lingo, that share the same experiences, that are going to affirm and empathize with your kids, earn their trust, and then leverage that against them. And then the last one, coaching. Excuse me. Not just parental controls, but caring controls. They will always know more. They will always find ways to beat us. But if we invite them into the process, we give them agency, watch them shine. Any rule that they help us create is a rule they are more bound to obey. Have them join you in the process. We just had Christmas. Some of you may have gotten your kids a digital device for the first time. Maybe it's a gaming device, maybe it's an iPod, maybe it's an iPhone, maybe it's an iPad, maybe it's another kind of a tablet, maybe they got a new Chromebook for school, whatever the case is, they got a new piece of internet-connected technology. What I would encourage that you do is that we recognize that this is a conversation about technology that is me with you, not me against you. We're not at war here. We want you to succeed. I am with you. I am for you. I want your success more than you even realize. And coming alongside them and encouraging them. We call it a a digital trust playbook. And you can search our website. If you search playbook, it'll come up, and it's I call it a digital code of conduct because I like more technical terms, but playbook is more friendly, and so that's what we call it. But it's a way for you to help formulate a collection of rules when technology can be used, for how long, where, what happens when you don't, and all those kinds of things. Are they allowed at the dinner table? How many hours a day? All that kind of stuff. And you put something together, you sign it all, you date it, and then if you want to amend it, you can go ahead and do that. But one of the things that Chris, and this is what this slide is getting towards, we're talking about coaching and recognizing the not me against you, but the me with you and the me for you. Chris had a time where he has 4 kids, a daughter and then 3 sons, and 2 of the sons are twins. One has Down syndrome, the other one doesn't, which is a unique dynamic. And then they have another younger son. And one day after, or it was either playing video games or right after, they were getting into quite the argument and fight. And what Chris did in that moment was to kind of pause and for them to consider, outside of playing these video games, is this how you usually talk to your brothers? Is this how you interact with them? Well, no. See what happens at times when you're playing video games, the effect that can have upon how you treat other people. Think about the power and the control that the technology has, and now it's no longer me against my brother, it's us against the machine. Look at what it's doing. And it's intentional. From the game creators to create something that is so consuming that you can get so tunnel focused that anything else is a distraction from you getting what you're wanting to do, whether it's to achieve the next level or to whatever it is. And as parents, we need to realize that this isn't just something that happens on a PlayStation. This is something that happens during Candy Crush, all right? This isn't something that just as parents and adults we're immune to this if we don't actually have a gaming system. We all have our games that we play when we're sitting in the line waiting for Instacart to bring our groceries to us at Aldi or whatever the case is. We all have the things that we do to pass time away, and we just have to be mindful of the amount of time that is given to that and the attention given there. So again, create a digital playbook. We talk about device ownership, how much time, the location, the rewards, the consequences. Again, that QR code points you directly to it, or you can search our website for digital playbook, and it's a PDF download, and it's 2 pages front and back, or 2 pages, 1 front and back. It's either 3 or 4 pages. I made it 2 months ago, and I still can't remember how many pages it is. So a digital playbook for you. Another thing that we need to help you with is hugging your router. The router is the most ignored device in your home, the most forgotten about until it stops working. Right? And in my neighborhood, I have Verizon. The cell coverage is awful. So if I lose my Wi-Fi, I have nothing. Right? So your poor router, again, is the most used and most underappreciated device in your home. So if you don't understand it, ask your kids to help you set it up. Again, that's that coaching that's coming alongside. Let's do this together. And then again, changing the passwords afterwards. We recommend Griffin products. That is not to say that other routers are not good. We just think that the default parental controls on Griffin routers is better than anybody else. Now, Bark just bought a router company and might create something that is on par with what Griffin has done, but until they come up with something, they don't get our promotions. All right? We believe that Griffin is the. Now, does that mean that all other routers are terrible? No. There are ways that you can, and we have on our website, if you go to on the top panel, there's devices, it's a drop down, or there's a devices tab that you click on, and in there is wireless routers, and it will show you how to set up a variety of different things, things that you can do for free, things that have a subscription to it, and to set up your router in a way that is monitoring what is going on and filtering a variety of different types of content. This one here on the left is the Griffin Guardian. They have two products. There's a tower and then the Guardian. This Guardian is what Chris has in his house. If you have up to like a 2,000 square foot house, the Guardian should cover you pretty decently, unless, again, you live in Florida and you have a lot more concrete in your walls than in Michigan. Then it may not stretch as far, but it's usually for just about 2,000 square foot houses. And then the tower is this one here. And so there's options there. If you have a larger home, you can do multiples of these, and you can mesh and all that fun tech stuff. I'm not going to get into that because some of you, just the fact that I said mesh, you have no idea what I'm talking about. So then we want to create a tech path. There's some feedback coming through on the monitors on the stage. So we're creating a tech path. Every internet device is co-owned. That's what we talk about in our family. Even though it's JD's, it's JD's and Daddy's. Even though it's Ryan's until he moved out, it was Ryan's and Dad's. All right? We had this conversation early. It isn't negotiable. So we have to help me with how this can go. We want them to be a willing participant. And these things here, Covenant Eyes, Screen Time, Bark, Family Link, Gab Wireless, these are all resources. Gab Wireless is a actual cellular company. They created a smartphone-looking device that has a touch screen, but it doesn't have, you can get versions of them that don't have a web browser. They don't have an app store. It doesn't give you access to the outside, but it gives them texting, phone calls. I think there's an FM radio tuner as a part of it, a camera. You can text, but in some of them, you can't send images. You can only text. You can't do SMS messaging. And so there's a variety of ways that you can, with certain devices, create a safer digital environment for your kids by totally limiting their access. When Ryan was in middle school and high school, before he had his car, after band practice, he was in marching band in high school and was in the band in middle school. After band practice, he would have to call us for us to come pick him up after band practice. Rose and I would regularly get phone calls at the time when band practice was over from numbers that were not stored in our phones, because he would ask his friends who had iPhones to call and to borrow their phone, because he didn't want to take the track phone that we had provided for him out of his backpack to call Dad, because that's embarrassing, right? And so there are ways that we can go about this, create these environments for our kids. Again, if you want to save, so if this Gab wireless phone sounds interesting to you, we have an agreement with Gab that we can get you 30% off or $30 off of their devices, and you can do that. I think that if you also use the same QR code that is on the back here, that will also allow you for that. Their phones range between $100 and $150. They are definitely on the affordable side of things, but a great opportunity. There's no social media. There's no internet. There's no app store, calculator, phone, camera, bare bones. And that's what it looks like. So again, it's not a terribly ugly looking phone. It's a decent looking phone that your kids wouldn't be ashamed of, which is a sad thing that we have to consider, but you had your thing you were ashamed of too when you were a kid, right? So again, this is that framework that we're working for. So do you have a gaming kid? Maybe we need to remember that. And this slide, I'm just going to point to it and we'll get to questions. I have a couple of these slides. We have, again, 3 webinars a week that we do every week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. They are either at, depending on the day, 9 o'clock, noon, and every week we have an 8 p.m. one as well. So if you work during the day, you can watch an 8 p.m. as well. There's always 2 noons, 1 9 a.m. and 1 8 p.m. every week. And so we go through in our gaming, I actually just did this webinar last week, I think it was on Tuesday, on gaming addiction. And we have addiction in quotes because it's not a medically, addiction is a medical term. And there isn't yet a diagnosis for gaming addiction. It's in the appendix of the DSM-5, and the World Health Organization has some of it, but it's not quite there yet. All right, so, but talking about the brain against the game, following the rating, being aware of chat. Again, we said wherever anything that has a chat feature has predatory activity. So when your kids are gaming, if there's chat feature in it, be aware of what's going on there. Making a plan and then knowing your kid, because as you had said, kids are different. They absolutely are. Silas, I was watching Home Alone over Christmas break. Silas is Kevin McAllister. All right, I'm convinced of it, that my 2-year-old is one that he could defend our house against anybody when he's 8. And JD is the rule follower to the nth degree. Those kids I'm going to parent differently, and I will be unfair. I'm okay with that. How about a kid who loves watching YouTube? We have a webinar again on YouTube and wanting to help you figure that out. There's looking at YouTube Kids, a restricted mode, family link, clean browsing, the Griffin router. We talk through a variety of different ways that you can manage and monitor YouTube as a parent, that you can help with monitoring either the content or the amount of screen time that is being used and all of those kinds of things. Again, just to give you an idea of what are some things that we're doing. We want to be as helpful as we can. Do you have a kid with Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat? We do webinars on all of those where we're talking through the effects of cortisol and dopamine and the whispers of Instagram and all of these things that we want you to be aware of, that is being intentionally done because of the neurological development of your child. The brain develops back to front. The prefrontal cortex is where a lot of that I shouldn't do that part of your brain comes in. And so because of that, we have some things that are going on. It's developmentally that app companies are taking advantage of and stuffing their pocketbooks with. And so we just want you to be aware of what's going on. And again, you can register for those webinars at any time. So how do you keep flexing your digital parenting superpowers? Register for some of our webinars. They're free. It's either me talking or Chris talking, and whoever isn't talking is in the chat answering questions. All right? And so you have people who are willing and wanting to help, and we do these 3 days a week, and they are free and available to anybody. Again, since May, we've had over 4,000 people sit in on our webinars in 30 different countries. That's why we do different times, because we have to figure out how to help people in Australia and in the UK, not just the West Coast, East Coast. We just this year, so 99.3 Joy FM is a Christian radio station in Holland, Michigan, which is along the lake shore right near Grand Rapids. All right? One of the morning show hosts goes to church with Chris, and they have a great relationship. Like, hey, would you guys be, and one of the kids that was in Chris's youth group is now a marketing guy at the radio station, saying, could we do a digital minute every day with you? And so the ride in and the ride home, there's a digital minute. If you, obviously you're not going to be listening to 99.3, it's in Michigan. But if you want those 1 minute clips, those audio clips sent to you, you can scan this QR code, or on our Facebook page. We recently posted this within the last week or so. You comment the word minute on our post, and that will subscribe you to getting, and you can choose, you can either get it as a message on Facebook, or you can get it as an email, and you get those things sent to you. And they're just little 1 minute digital clips that we give parenting advice that we're now doing and streaming. So again, I'll give you a chance to finish. What's that? Correct, because that happened just this 4 days ago. We've just launched, and we didn't update that part on there. So I would say you can take it from there. Yep, and you can also I will make certain that that Travis puts it out, and you can tag the link that's on our Facebook page. So they have to comment on the Facebook post to get into that. All right, so that's that. The Protect app. I have great news for you. The Protect app is launched. I have other great news for you. Grace Community Bible Church is providing it to all people within the church. I have also great news for you. It should be ready by this weekend. The app is out, but the site codes for organizations, there's a bug in it, and our developer thinks that he's got it done and figured out. We're testing it this week, and hopefully by the end of this week, I'll be able to send you an email, Travis, saying we're ready to go. And again, this is a resource for you all to be able to have. Now, this isn't a monitoring or filtering kind of thing. This is an information, equipping, advocating kind of thing. And eventually, and we have the final edits we are approving this week. We have videos that were written for you to watch with your kids, and then conversation guides that go along with those. And the on-camera people are not Chris and I. It's young people. And I still biblically am categorically part of young people because technically old starts at 40 and I am 39 until July. But my son Ryan is oh, perfect. I'm with you. Kick the ball down the road a little bit farther. My son Ryan, he's 19. He did the videos for 6th through 8th graders. Another college kid did the videos for, I think, the 3rd through 5th graders. Then we had a middle school girl do the videos for kindergarten through 2nd grade. And so it's people on camera that are kids that of the age that the kids they're talking to would look up to them and say, oh, they're really cool. I want to, if they're saying stuff. And so those are also going to be available soon. I'd recommend Childhood 2.0. And then if you want to stay in touch with other ways, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. If you want our weekly newsletter, you can text the word PROTECT to 66866, and that's on the guide, I believe, still. And you can do that, and that is another resource for you. I'm done. Any questions that you have? Yes, go ahead. Absolutely. Email info at protectyoungeyes.com, and Michelle will begin that conversation with you. It all depends on how long, how many, all those kinds of things. So there's not necessarily a webinar equals this amount. It's a scale that we want to be. I'll tell you this, we are as affordable, if not the most affordable organization that is doing this by a long shot. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. COVID forced everybody into that world. And so I'm not going to say we've perfected it, but we're a lot better at it now than we were in May. Any other questions about content here? Our website is a great resource for you. Tom asked, are we talk through setting up routers and those kinds of things? Because every router is a little bit different, I would just point you to our posts on that. And if you have the 2-wire AT&T routers, there are some things that you're just not going to be able to do with that because of how things are set up within those routers, but you can piggyback one of the Griffin routers or others onto that, and then you have 2 signals, and you as parents only use the AT&T one, and your kids' devices only use the Griffin one, and so there's other ways you can set stuff up, but that gets into just a lot of just technical stuff that's very individualized. But we want to help you, and again, you can ask us info@protectyoungeyes.com, through our Facebook chat bot that's there, through Instagram. You can reach out to me. Wait till after a church service instead of before a church service, but if you see me in the sanctuary after a church service, you're more than welcome to come up and ask me any question and talk to me at any time. All right, I just like to prep for worship services, and so that's why I protect before. Absolutely. Yep. What's that? Okay, so we have a book to give away. Mr. Pastor Travis, take it from here.
Turn on this orange one. Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that, Doug.
You're welcome.
Hey, and let me say before we get the book, I don't want it to sound like he's up here giving a big advertisement for ProtectYoungEyes.com. I mean, he does work there and stuff, but these are legit resources. And there's a lot of other websites out there that provide stuff like this, but I mean, I've spent the last 15 years navigating, trying to help parents with the right resources, and I haven't found many like this that have such specific advice. And he didn't even mention this, but it's just one of 1,000 different things that they offer. But one of the things I was struggling with, I got a 14, 12, and 8-year-old at home, and trying to set up parental controls on the Xbox One is so frustrating. And I feel like I'm pretty tech savvy, and it was really irritating. And so we were having lunch. He's like, check our website. There's a little play-by-play. And I'm like, yeah, I've tried those before. And no joke, it's still like a 15-step plan, but it navigates each one, and they have one for every device you can think of, for a Switch, for an iPhone, for an Android, for a Wii, for old devices, whatever. And then my son was mentioning an app he was talking on his, I didn't think you could talk to somebody who's on a PlayStation when you're on an Xbox, but Discord. And I hadn't heard of it. And so I was like, let me check their website. Sure enough, they got a whole thing on that specific app. And then kind of an objective, here's what it is. Do with it what you want, but here's what it is. And then if there are within certain apps ways to set up parental controls. And it's like you said, I don't put all my faith in those parental controls, but it's a great place to start. You want to give them as many hurdles as you can to jump over before they get to the badness. So anyways, I know it might sound like a commercial, but it's for a reason, and all this stuff is free. I mean, I'm not sure it's not much of a commercial if you don't have to pay for it, but it's just really good info. So all that said, I came here not because I wanted to show this to you guys, because I thought if we bring him here for you guys, I get to hear it too. And so that worked out well for all of us. Anyways, this is, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go with the birthday closest to mine. And so does anybody have an August birthday? Oh, we got two. I'm August 9th. 19? Oh, so close. Oh, here you go. Good job, Mr. Ryan. Oh, well, good job. Let me ask you
19
this.
is so closer than 22.
We got another couple books. Does anybody have a teenager at home that doesn't like to talk, and you have a hard time instigating conversation? Anyways, if you do, this book is called Give Me 5. It's one of my favorite conversation starters. Like, give me 5 sports you'd like to see in the Olympics. Give me 5 types of gear you take camping. Give me 5 objects you fill with water. Anyways. There you go. There you go. These aren't to give away, but I do want you to know about one of the books that we give if you're looking for a way to have that conversation, to have the talk with your teenager. That's a really good one, The Talk by Jonathan McKee. And these are 2 that we've used with our kids to talk about, just introduce the conversation about sex and sexuality. Mm-hmm. And it uses, like, I love what you said, it uses just anatomically correct terms. And it's a way to have a conversation with 3 to 5-year-olds, God made your body, and 6 to 9-year-olds, how God makes babies. And yeah, there's the purity code, I think it is, for it goes into, it might be. That's perfect. But this is one of the things, is that you just want to have that. It's a series of conversations. It's not, and that's his whole point in this. I'll give away the whole point. It's not a talk. It's a series of conversations that you're having, just like Doug was saying. You want to be able to lead into a conversation, because one talk and you overwhelm them with tsunami of really awkward conversation, but a series of conversations that last, because it's going to hit differently at 6 than it would at 8, then 10, then 12, then 14. And honestly, when they're 25 and married and like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, help me. You want it to have built to that point, because it's just something that you guys talk about, and it's a lot easier to say that than it is to do. We read, me and my boys read this one back when IHOP was open. We read this in the IHOP parking lot. I was like, hey, let's go out to dinner and talk about this. Then I realized we probably shouldn't talk about this in IHOP. But we're already in the park. Let's just talk about it in the car, I guess. And so there's no wrong way to, or context. It was not the context I was picturing in my head. I would have that conversation with him. But you just have the conversation, and you keep leading into it. Anyways, thank you for being willing to do this. Thank you for caring about your kids, about your grandkids. And I would encourage you, be willing to encourage your friends' parents to be able to have these conversations too. So much, I know we live in a neighborhood with a lot of kids, and a lot of their exposure to stuff that we would rather them not be exposed to has come from hanging out with their friends at their neighbor's house. And I don't want them to not be willing to do that, but I also want them to have a context for when that happens, you put it down and talk to somebody. So thank you for caring.